I recently watched a YouTube interview with a brother speaking about his past involvement in drugs, violence, prison, and eventually leaving that life behind for Islam. First and foremost, I respect his journey. Speaking openly about that past cannot be easy, and stories like his can reach young people who may not listen to somebody they feel cannot relate to them. But parts of the wider discussion left me uncomfortable. As a black Muslim of Caribbean heritage, I often find these narratives complicated. Not because I want to take anything away from the person telling his story, but because of the way black Caribbean people are sometimes portrayed within British, Asian, Muslim spaces. There can be a subtle suggestion that drugs, street violence, and criminal culture entered British communities through Caribbean people. It may not be directly said, but it appears in the framing, the examples, and the way different communities are described. The problem is that crime has never belonged to one race. Asian and Muslim communities have also had long histories of involvement in the British drug trade, just as criminal networks from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkey, Iran, the Balkans, and North Africa have played roles in the international trade. That doesn't make any of those communities inherently criminal. It shows why crime should never be attached to one ethnic group. Where history is simplified, stereotypes fill the gaps. Black Caribbean communities are often discussed without enough recognition of the conditions our families entered when they came to Britain. They faced racism, poor housing, limited employment, police harassment, and exclusion from institutions. Yet those communities built churches, businesses, youth clubs, sound systems, community centers, and family networks. There was a struggle, but there was also discipline, resilience, and strong community values. The discussion also suggested that respect for elders was essentially an Asian or African value, which revealed a lack of understanding of Caribbean culture. Respect for elders is deeply rooted in Caribbean households. Many of us were raised to greet older people properly, watch how we spoke around adults, give up our seat, and understand that grandparents, aunties, uncles, and even older neighbors carried authority. In many Caribbean homes, manners were not optional. As somebody who spends time in both Africa and the Caribbean, I also see a strong cultural overlap between the two. Family, spirituality, food, music, storytelling, communal responsibility, and respect for elders are shared in different ways. These relationships are far more layered than the usual stereotypes suggest. None of this denies crime or dysfunction within black communities. Every community has problems that must be confronted. But honesty has to work both ways. We cannot speak openly about failures within the black community while treating similar problems elsewhere as isolated incidents, hidden secrets, or individual mistakes. Islam should make us more just, not more tribal. What these conversations need is not less honesty, they need fuller honesty. The same issue appeared in another video I watched about whether Muslim men wearing braids is haram. The speaker reportedly looked at Jamaican-style braids and asked, "Who are you, Bob Marley?" Some people may hear that as a harmless cultural joke. I heard the same cultural hierarchy. The discussion was no longer only about whether a hairstyle was permitted. Jamaican culture had become the punchline. The implication was that looking too Jamaican made somebody less serious, less respectable, and somehow less Islamic. I'm a black Muslim of Jamaican heritage. Becoming a better Muslim should not require me to become less Jamaican. But in some Muslim spaces, there's an unspoken idea that becoming more Islamic means becoming culturally Arab or South Asian. There's nothing wrong with learning Arabic, wearing Arab clothing, or appreciating the cultures of other Muslims. The problem begins when cultural preference is presented as a religious obligation. It becomes a problem when Arabs or South Asian culture is treated as naturally Islamic while African and Caribbean culture is treated with suspicion. An Arab or South Asian Muslim can usually wear traditional clothing without defending its place within Islam. But when a black Muslim wears braids, locks, or African clothing, somebody often questions whether it's vanity, imitation, or evidence of an un-Islamic influence. That tells us which cultures are treated as the standard and which are expected to explain themselves. Anti-blackness does not disappear because somebody says Assalamu alaikum. Racism does not become harmless because it comes from another Muslim. Cultural superiority does not become Islamic because somebody attaches a religious ruling to it. That is why the Bob Marley comment matters. It does not simply criticize a hairstyle, it uses Jamaican identity as an insult. The message becomes clear. Do not look too Jamaican. Do not carry too much of that culture. Do not bring too much of yourself into Islam. Islam is universal. Yet Muslim identity is often treated as though it has an ethnic headquarters. Black Muslims are invited into the religion but sometimes expected to enter through somebody else's cultural doorway. I've never believed Islam requires that. African Muslims have been scholars, rulers, teachers, and builders of Islamic civilization for centuries. Islam did not belong to one ethnicity then, and it does not belong to one now. Who gets to define what a Muslim looks like? Who gets to tell the story of Black Caribbean people? Who gets treated as complex and who gets reduced to a stereotype? I respect the brother's journey, but I can respect one man's experience without turning it into a judgment of an entire community. We can confront crime without racializing it. We can discuss culture without mocking it. And we can build bridges without asking Black Caribbean Muslims to accept distorted versions of our history.
أفحسب الذين كفروا أن يتخذوا عبادي من